What's up everybody, we back at it again with another Magnum Quest video, and in this one I'm going to be giving you a few solid setups to use as you transition from the mid game into the late game. I will be breaking them down as usual, timestamps available in the video description for each setup, and showing them in use so you can get an idea of how they operate. Let's get it. So by now you may have seen my early / mid progression video, and I'm hoping this one I'm going to be able to improve on some things that I thought I could have done differently. One of the main things is actually showing the setups, using more visual examples, whether that's in trial, dungeon, their skill icon. I can't do chapter adventure because right now I've been hard stuck for a while on this 27.5 stage. It's a nightmare. Early game I think is maybe up to chapter 16. I think previously I said 12 to 13, but that was pretty generous. Now that I started a second account, based off my experience, I would say at least chapter 16, whether due to the difficulty in enemy setups or having some issues, mainly due to my hero levels because of the minimum power requirements. Mid-game is about chapter 17 to 24, and finally late game is about 25 plus. This is where you're definitely going to need a squad level of 300 plus. It could be a little bit earlier than this, but this is just to give you a rough idea. If you weren't aware, when all 5 of your squad heroes reach level 300, your squad changes to something that looks like this, and then now you can universally level all your heroes at once. This is where gold, XP, barrel all become more and more of a problem due to the cost versus rate of acquiring. Right now, as you can see, XP is my biggest issue. I have the barrel and gold isn't great, but I can get a decent amount every day to save up. So the first setup, so what the meta formation has been since as far as I can remember for mid and late game is running Ares plus 4 Forest faction heroes. Everyone's supporting your Ares, kind of like what you were doing with Gaia if you used her in the early game, in intro to mid game. I'm not exactly sure how many chapters this will boost you, but this is what I primarily use to reach chapter 27, which is where I'm stuck right now. This is another reason why I suggested focusing Gaia as your main DPS carry up until this point. The reason why I think she's the way to go is not only her being the top damage pre-level 200, but if you do gold 3 her, as you transition into mid game, she becomes easy food for your Ares. I think I'll probably stop using my Gaia around chapter 18. I think I've mentioned this before. I think at that point, my main account, I had an Ares of 6-star, maybe higher. It really all depends on my luck or your luck if the food is ready to 5-star Ares alongside having the requirements needed to make level 201. Depending how you're feeling after testing out the chapters, looking at your winning battle stage history stats from your heroes, seeing firsthand the difficulty, assess the situation, then if you still feel Ares will better suit your progression, then you can feed your Gaia. Since this is a pretty bold statement and I don't want to be the reason your progression is ruined, feeding Gaia would be an instant 5-star if you have another gold 3 hero food. I don't suggest doing this, like I said, until your Ares can be at least level 201, so you need a squad level of 175. Now, I have seen players keep her as a backup and used in late chapters, but for the most part, in my opinion, chapter 20 is a bit pushing it. Gaia carried your team long enough pre-Ares level 201. She needs a break. Her back is sore. Let her have a spa day. You can always build up another one fairly easy. If you choose to use this setup, I highly suggest, if you haven't been, to start using your faction summons only on Forest. You need a lot of food, a crap load of food for this setup. They made it a bit easier with the magic list introduction seen here, because before when I was doing regular summons, all the heroes were an option. Now you can select 5 from each to narrow down your chances on specifics. Forest heroes to support Ares are Fair, Phi, Ion, and Oshishi. Formation would be Ares plus 4 Forest supports. Typical hero positioning of how I ran it would be Fair, Oshishi in the front, and then Phi, Ares, Ion. This was my go-to because it's more CC focused. It's good for tough enemy stages that have high threats due to Oshishi being able to use her Confine effect and take out the enemy with the highest attack along her AoE ultimate Sleep to lock down the entire team. You can fiddle around with the positioning, but the main reason I would place my Oshishi in the front is due to this skill right here. When attacked, Oshishi blinks away and leaves a mirage behind, which inflicts the stun effect upon all surrounding enemies. Usually that's going to be the enemy frontline. Even though the duration is only 2 seconds, it's still helpful, so that's just my reasoning for placing her there. When she blinks away, depending on what enemy heroes are in the setup, those frontliners may change their focus to Fair, causing a bigger group up that your Ares can take advantage of. Like I said, this may not always work, so placing Ares or Phi in the front may be needed. You have Phi for the haste and energy buff at the beginning, which syncs up very nicely with Fair to allow him to get his Fatal Attraction pulse skill off faster. I made a video defining haste if you want to check that out, or what other stats in the game mean. Ion is there for the revivals and provides some decent CC. Of course, you have Ares. This is the bread and butter of late game. The chapters you'll be able to smash through with him after the levels and Ascension Stars investment is just, it's invaluable. I know it isn't fun to feel like you need a specific hero to do well, but seriously, if you don't make him your top priority, your progression in all aspects of the game, PvP and PvE, will suffer. So why do this to yourself? This game has a hero who's insane, which is Ares. Definitely take advantage of this. You got a couple options here like Phi, Ion, and Oshishi, who can be swapped out for Naomi depending on situations that require the enemy team to get rid of their buffs, such as versing maybe a double enemy Ares stage to remove his invulnerability, or double Arthur stage to remove his shields. I'm sure there's more, but these are the ones I can just remember that were an issue. Or swap those out for Ekra for the heal block she applies on her ultimate at level 201 for those heavy healing stages like double Aluin. Some positioning variations, moving Ares directly behind Fair and then Phi to the middle. The reason for Ares always being behind Fair is, as you can see in this example, Fair pulls the enemies in and Ares walks right up to them to maximize the enemies he can hit when his ultimate Spin to Win Tornado Slash becomes available. If you had Ares besides Fair, like in this example, you can see this is limiting the amount of enemies hit, being less beneficial for your progression and chance at beating the stage. Moving Fair opposite the enemy stage biggest threats. Let's use this example right here. In this stage, let's say those two enemy heroes I want to focus on. So if I place my Fair in the front left, this will allow him to pull the middle and back left of the enemy seen here. If I were to place him in the front right, as you can see here, I pull the other side. So that's why hero positioning is very important. Issues you may encounter are going to be primarily focused on Fair. No enemies are pulled due to the enemy's dodge being significantly higher than your Fair's hit. Your Fair's pull direction can be altered if the enemy stage has assassin heroes like Carlotta, who jumps to your backline at the beginning, or a Phi in the front, but that's not really seen too often in PvE. It's more used as a method to change the enemy Fair's direction. The reason for this is because Phi gets a little extra step by tumbling at the beginning of the fight compared to your other frontliner, so he gets ahead and causes the enemy Fair to change direction if he isn't directly opposite of him. Here's an example of what I mean by this. As you can see, instead of the enemy Fair walking up to my Fair, he changes direction and goes to the other side where the Phi is. This can be very useful for specific situations for either avoiding some of your heroes here being pulled or pulling certain enemy heroes right here. Fair just instantly dies before even doing anything. In this case, he probably needs more stars since as you ascend heroes, their base stats increase. Better gear can also help if you don't have 5-star gear, maybe low enhancements and not utilizing gear sets. So now here's the second setup. This is how I would normally hero position them. We have Fair, Harry in the front, Ares, Phi, or Sur, and then Ion. So this is a more damage focused formation with the addition of Sur and Harry. Having Sur can be an issue because she is of the Divinity faction, but you can get copies of her from the ladder store. Be lucky with regular summons or use Dragon Shards and Dragon Scales. This isn't the correct term, but it's just these items seen here. I feel Dragon seems easier to remember since it's called Dragon Summons. You can get these from milestone levels in the faction dungeon tower. In the meantime, you can swap her out for Phi, who's easier to build up. I would use this setup in enemy stages where you simply need to burst them down, where the longer you stall the fight, the more trouble you're going to be in. One thing players need to realize is you're going to always be at a power deficit compared to the enemy stages. It just makes more sense to try and outdamage them rather than outlast, but some stages you need the better focus CC first setup to make things easier for you. On enemy stages where the incoming damage isn't crazy bad, you can swap out Ion and just have Ares, Sur, and Phi in the backline, but as you get further into the late game, the chances of this are pretty slim. Certain stages can be extremely tough, as I'm sure you've encountered some already. There isn't really much in terms of positioning variations. You'll want to have your Sur in the middle so her Scorched Earth skill is able to reach more of your heroes as well as the enemies rather than having her in the front like this. You'll see the skill radius right here, so you can see not all your heroes are going to be able to get hit by this and they won't get the heals, or having her in the back left or right. As you can see, because she's in the back left, the opposite side is being missed, so middle is the most optimal positioning for Sur. Sur's damage and heals are super helpful, seeing how late game setups I typically like to run more DPS heavy formations. Same tip like the first setup, with Fair moving him opposite the enemy stage biggest threats. Also a side note here, if your Harry dies without getting his ultimate off, I would just reset if it's a stage you're having trouble with, because without Harry's ultimate, adding that attack and haste buff, your damage output will be significantly less, especially if you're running without Phi. So now the third setup, this one is going to be my least experienced with, as I didn't really use Durla in my progression. I see a lot of players using her, so I thought I'd give it a shot at whipping up a setup. So this is how I'd probably hero position them. We got Fair, Ares in the front, and then Durla, Sur, or Wyndon, and then Cinia. The front line, you do have some options to play around with, since this won't give you any faction aura bonuses if you use this one. Maybe drop Fair for Arthur if you're using Wyndon instead of Sur, so you can utilize the 3 Fortress faction aura seen here. Or use Harry with Sur so you can utilize the 3 wild faction auras seen here. You got some possibilities as the front line I was having some issues with thinking of. Now I know a lot of players like using Durla in the front due to her tank capabilities, but this is really only possible if she's able to get her ultimate off applying the leech effect, translating that damage into HP at level 3. This is definitely needed. Without this, I think she's just too squishy, while also getting stats off defeated enemy units with Immortal Undead skill. I could be wrong here, but I think you really need Cinia with her to help her energy issues and how crucial her ultimate is to her survivability and damage. Positioning variations are pretty limited except for the front line. With Ares being beside Fair, I think this is a good opportunity to utilize his ultimate knockdown effect to disrupt the enemy's skill casting, to buy as much time as you can for your Durla to keep getting her ultimates off. I don't see much wiggle room for the backline, seeing how Cinia's skill Royal Blessing affects only the backline, and this is what you want for your Durla because it provides a nice boost in starting energy. Like I said, this is my least experienced setup, so leave some comments down below if you use Durla as your main DPS carry, so others can maybe try setups out to help with their progression. Just remember, these are potential mid-ish and late game setups to aim towards. Obviously, you have to work with what heroes you have, so you can try swapping in some heroes as alternatives and seeing how it goes. Hero positioning is very important in this game, so like I mentioned, you may need to play around with some of these formations depending on the enemy stage setup. Then obviously star map investment, levels, and hero ascension stars will make a difference. But what I can tell you though is Ares will be your #1 asset for a long time. I'm currently not at the point right now where I find him not needed, but I'm sure as I build up more heroes, maybe some of the rarer ones like Sur and Kados, or newer heroes get added, he may slowly be used as a hero alternative, but for many players this will be way down the road. As always, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for future videos, and stay tuned for the next one.